Hello to the curious and the thoughtful. It's Ellie here. Hello again. This week, there's been some synchronicity. What's happened is the world has kind of created so much noise, and the noise has gotten so loud that it spilled into my dreams. But it also then broke out and turned into real life as well. And it's quite impossible to ignore. The question is it random or is it deliberately so and pointing us towards the one thing that we keep forgetting? And that's what I'm going to be talking about in today's show. Now, those of you who have seen the previous episode where I was talking about a dream that occurred a few weeks ago and then an incident that occurred that was kind of related to the dream, I think it all comes together. A few weeks ago, I had a dream about Lolo. I'm not going to rehash it in full, but basically she ran out into a highway. It was really busy, and I felt that I had this moral dilemma. Even though it sounded like an incredibly busy, frightening highway, and she was terrified. She couldn't hear me yelling for her to please come back, and I was calling her to return. This is the unlosable dog. This is a dog that I've had for 7.5 years, her entire life. And she's a mummy's girl. She's always right here. And she is right here. She's always by my side. And in this dream, she couldn't hear me. She couldn't come back. I had to step into the traffic in order to get her. And as soon as I stepped into the traffic, I realized there was no traffic. It was just the noise of traffic. And then I woke up. Right. That happened a few weeks ago. But then this weekend, today is Tuesday. I had to look to be sure. Today is Tuesday here in Australia. On Saturday, I lost my dog for the first time in her life. And I'm going to give you the incident in full because I want you to understand why I'm doing this video today. I think it's all connected, and it's all connected to things that are happening right now around us. So I've just moved into the new house. I know I talk about it a lot because I'm so excited. And one thing that I immediately noticed I had to take care of was that the garage acts as a kind of a carport. It has a garage door, but there's nothing at the back. And it just directly leads into the garden. And I was a little bit afraid that two things might happen. Either Lolo might follow me out when I'm driving out of the garage. I can't really stop her. Or I was afraid that especially in cold weather when the cat likes to find somewhere warm to sleep, she might fall asleep underneath the wheel of my car because the engine might still be warm or something, and I don't want to accidentally run her over. So I thought, well, the very first job I'm going to have done on this house is I'm going to close off the garage so that it's a proper garage with walls, And so that's what I've had a tradesperson doing. And the fellow who was closing off my garage, which was for the purposes of protecting Lolo so that she wouldn't run off or get locked out of the property. Well, he was using an nail gun, and that was terrifying Lolo. I was also working in the garden at the same time. And so I was a bit distracted, and there was a moment where I saw her run past me and the tradie, but I didn't remember that the garage door was open because, this is not something that I'm generally worried about. I've had Lolo for 7.5 years. I always know where she is. And even when I look around and think I don't know where she is, I always find her right at my feet. She's a mummy's girl, and she never goes anywhere. Not without her mum. Anyway, it never occurred to me that she might be so terrified by the sound of these tools that she ran off, but she did. She's in a strange house that she doesn't know very well. She was trying to escape the sound of the nail gun. She ran down the driveway, and then she went, she got herself into some kind of a panic. She flew out of the street and disappeared. It took me 10 minutes to realize that she wasn't right there beside me like she normally is. Anyway, I immediately thought, where's the dog? Because she's never very far away. I went looking through the house. I couldn't find her. Every single room, she wasn't there. I didn't know what to do. So I said, okay, I'm just going to look down the end of the street. I left the tradie guy at the house. I went down the driveway. I looked all over the street, couldn't find her. And then I thought, well, dogs often, when they run away, they go to their happy place. Lola doesn't really have a happy place yet because she doesn't know the neighborhood very well, but there is some green space really close to my house where I often throw the ball for her. So I thought, okay, she must be down there. So I walked down there and I couldn't see her. When I got to that space, I started calling for her, and there was a young family that were walking down the path, and they said, "Are you looking for your dog?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "We saw a dog bolting down this pathway. It was like it was on fire. It was running so fast." And Lola's fast, but that sounded like a panicky dog, and I thought, okay, that must be her. So I started walking in that direction, calling her, but she wasn't coming. And then I called my tradie because I was getting further away from home, and I asked him to bring my bicycle so that I could look around. So he did. He came and he brought my bike to me, and I got on the bike, and I didn't even realize that the bike had a flat tire. That's my adrenaline started to, because I love Lolo and I wanted to go find her. So I got on the bike. The bike had a flat tire. I didn't even know. I couldn't even tell. And I'm cycling around the neighborhood and I'm just calling out, Lolo, Lolo, Lolo. And it's very, very peculiar for me to call out the dog's name and not have her running towards me. That's how much of a mummy's girl she is. I cycled around my neighborhood for an hour. And I have to say, I was terrified. I didn't know which direction to go in because this is a new neighborhood for us. I didn't know for the life of me, where would she go? But I found witnesses everywhere I went. There was, of course, that first family in the beginning. And then as I traveled down the path, I crossed over into another green space area. And there was another young family who was cycling around there. And they said that they had seen a dog crossing the road into another area of green. So I went over there and I found a woman with her grandchildren. And the woman said that there was a dog that was bouncing around, kind of hitting all different corners of this park area. And then it went to cross another road and a man called it, and it started to double back to the man. And the granddaughter described the dog in full, and I showed them a short video of Lolo, and they said, yes, that was definitely the dog that they saw, and that they'd seen her after being called, walking towards a man that was going bald. And so, okay, I said, did he seem to be an old man to the young grandchild? And they kind of described him and everything. And I said, okay, well, maybe she's been picked up by this fellow. I kept cycling around, and I was cycling around on this flat tire, which I didn't even know, for an hour. And then I thought to myself, no, I can't find her. I don't know where she is. And I really, really was in a bit of a worried state because she could have been anywhere. And she wouldn't even, she got to the point where she was so panicked she got lost and didn't even know where home was. And she's registered and microchipped, but she's registered with the wrong council, on the wrong address, and she has a pet ID, which is the microchip, but it's registered to the wrong address. And yes, that my telephone number is still the same, but who knows? I mean, who knows what's going to happen to her? She may not even make it. She might, get hit by a car or something like that. So I went home and I thought, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is get online and make sure that the registration details are up to date. So I was looking through my filing cabinet trying to find her registration details to update the address. And then my phone rang. Now, she had been missing for an hour, and it was the local pet emergency vet who called me. And as soon as I saw the thing come up on my phone, I answered the phone and I thought, they've got my dog. But, seeing pet emergency written on the screen sounded really scary. And I thought, oh no, gosh, what have they found? I picked up the phone and I said, have you found my dog? And they said, yes. And I said, is she okay? And they said, yes. And I burst into tears. Of course I did. And the lady was very sympathetic. And she said that some people had found her and had brought her into the emergency vet centre. So I said, okay, I'm going to come and get her. And I got the address and I got in my car and I went and I got her. Anyway, I'm getting, emotional thinking about it because I love my pets. I think, I made that really clear earlier in the week when I talked about my dream and how much I love my pets. And I can't believe that this happened straight after that dream. Anyway, I went to pick up Lolo at the vet. She was very happy to see me. And gosh, the state of her was, it only took an hour for her to go from looking like a well cared for dog to one that had been living in the woods for months. She was caked in dirt and just looked, I don't know, she just looked neglected and uncared for. It only took an hour for her to look that way. Anyway, I said to the vet that I'd like to say thank you to the people who handed her in. And so I left my telephone number and said they're welcome to call me. I'd really like to say thank you. And shortly after, as it happened, they called the vet to find out if she was, if the owner had come to get her. And so the vet gave them my telephone number. And so they called me. I actually was still in the car when they called me. And I said, I'd really like to do something for you. Could you tell me where you live? And I'd like to come and see you. And the girl who called me, she told me their address. And so I thought, well, I don't know what to do. I might just buy them something nice to drink, like, a bottle of something nice or something to say thank you. And so I took Lolo home and I kept her safe and made sure she was okay. And then I thought, well, I think it was like an hour or so later that I just texted and said, I'd like to come over now if you're free. And they said yes. So I went to the bottle shop, which is like, where you buy your alcohol. And I went in and I asked the fellow there to help me. I'm going to tell you, I went a bit overboard. Even he was surprised. I said, I just want to give thank you to this couple. I don't know anything about them. All I know is that they're adults. Show me some really good stuff. And I didn't know what to pick, so I ended up picking multiple bottles of stuff. And it was really good quality stuff, black cherry rum and Japanese vodka and all kinds of things. And as I was buying it all, the guy said, gosh, you're really grateful, aren't you? And I said, yes, I really was. I didn't know. Nothing was enough. And so I just ended up buying half the shop. Anyway, I went to their home, and I've got to tell you, I was very surprised to see where they live, because it just goes to show how much of a panic and how lost my dog got in 1 hour. We are about a mile away from the nearest highway, and they're about a mile away from the same highway, but they're on the other side of the highway. And they found her bouncing around in their street. She was frothing at the mouth or foaming at the mouth. She was it looked as though she was on some kind of crack or speed or something. They said that she was absolutely manic and she was bouncing from house to house to house to house until they finally had her trapped inside someone's garden, and they slowly managed to approach her and put her on, I think they tied some string to her collar because she still had the string on her collar when I picked her up, and they took her to emergency. They said that her behavior and her manic kind of movements and everything, they weren't sure if she was injured or something. And this was only within an hour of her leaving the house. Not even an hour, because by the time I picked her up, it was just past an hour. So she was, it must have been 45 minutes or something when they found her, that she'd been missing. Anyway, so she was in an absolute blind panic, pants on fire panic, my dog. And she had even crossed a busy highway, because this highway is not a quiet little empty country highway. It's a busy highway. And she did it on a Saturday at around about lunchtime when everybody's out. And so she was so lucky to still be alive and uninjured. I don't know how she did it. She has no road savvy, so I just don't know how she did it. Anyway, I took the photo of this couple. I put it up on my community board here on the channel to show you who they are. And just because I was so grateful, and I said thank you and left them with enough booze. And as it turns out, they were a 19-year-old couple. So here in Australia, they're legal, but I would have to say they are incredibly lucky drinkers, because this is the best and the most booze they're probably going to have in a long time. So my guess is there was a party happening on the other side of the highway this weekend. But you know what? They deserved it. So quite frankly, good luck to them. I hope they had a lot of fun. But there's a reason why I'm giving you all of this information. And I think that it actually syncs with something else that's been going on. And that is that there's been this weird synchronicity. All this past week, I've been airing videos that I intended to air that all link to this particular phenomenon about distraction that takes us off track and confuses us, and this quiet and silence that helps to keep us centered, and how the truth sits in the center that's created by that silence. And I've been thinking so much. I knew that there were missing elements in this dream that I had, because, I find that my dreams they're important to me, hence the Ellie Dreams Down Under channel name. But it all seems to map together and in really peculiar ways. I mean, okay, so the biggest story at the moment in the news is the government shutdown and how it's impacting SNAP payments. And for anyone who doesn't know what SNAP is, it's kind of like the food stamps that you might hear about in movies and things like that. This is where people can use their SNAP eligibility or SNAP payments or food stamps to go into a supermarket and buy groceries. And a lot of Americans, in fact, I think it's about 42 million Americans, rely very heavily on SNAP in order to be able to feed themselves and their families. Because of the government shutdown, which took place, I think it was on the 1st of October, so more than a month now. A month occurred on the 1st of November. And 1st of November marked the day when the SNAP budget ran out, which means that because of the government shutdown, there's no SNAP payments in the pipeline. And there are states that are trying to find emergency funding. They've increased funding for food pantries. The food pantries or food banks are experiencing and are reporting much longer lines than usual from people who ordinarily would not need to stand in line at a food bank. And the uncertainty of this situation is causing a tremendous amount of anxiety, a really high-scale anxiety with the public. Now, SNAP, if it's feeding and helping to feed 42 million Americans, that's 1 in 8 Americans relies on SNAP. 1 in 8. That's a very big percentage. This failure of SNAP is about being able to eat. It's about survival. Food is that very bottom level, that very first basic level in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Without food and air and basic shelter, like the basic safety, you can't survive. It's the most basic need that a human has. People can't focus on truth. They can't focus on silence. They can't focus on anything that helps to center them when they're in a wild panic trying to figure out how to survive. And meanwhile, there's a lot of noise out there. There's non-stop talking. All of the leaders are arguing amongst themselves about who caused this and who's right and who's wrong. And of course, the media chips in to make sure that everyone is thinking of it along the lines that they need to be thinking of it, to be able to maintain all of the division and the hierarchy of the status quo and everything. Meanwhile, ordinary people are they're left in limbo and they're in survival mode, because SNAP is literally about putting bread on the table. The number one basic thing. I totally understand that many people are having a lot of trouble hearing me right now. I understand that they love me, they love the channel, they want to engage, but they're having trouble hearing me because the noise is so loud. And the survival instinct kicks in when serious, important issues happen. And what it does is it distracts us. It prevents us from being able to center ourselves so that we can find that solution. In yesterday's video, I did a very simple 3-minute miracle wonder kind of ritual, which was 3 steps. So basically stop, breathe, and notice. It gives room for thoughtful planning around a situation when you reprogram your mind instantly by focusing on what's happening rather than all of the noise that you hear. It allows you to stop and center so that you can plan around situations that you're affected by and think clearly through the noise. But people can't hear that if they're already surrounded by the noise and immersed in the noise and desperately trying to figure out if they're going to survive. In my dream, Lolo, who is the unlosable dog, she really is. I joke with people all the time when they say that their dog wanders off and things like that. And I say, I couldn't lose Lolo if I tried. I always know exactly where she is, always. Well, as it happens, blind panic can distract even the most loyal dog, even the most mummy-focused dog. And it's not just the same. It's not just like that for dogs. It's like that for anyone with a consciousness, anyone with a mind that could potentially be racing in panic because of the situation that they're confronted with. And in my dream, Lolo, the unlosable dog, she ran into a noisy highway where she couldn't hear me. She panicked, and I had to step in order to show that the noise was the point, because as soon as I stepped into that noisy traffic, it turns out it was noise. There was no traffic in that dream. The whole point of it was symbolized in that dream. The point of it was to frighten Lolo so that she couldn't hear me, and to frighten me enough to prevent me from walking into traffic. But in order to save my dog, I had to ignore that noise. I have no idea. I've got, there were things about that dream that bugged me all week, which is the reason why I asked you guys to tell me whether you thought I was right when I thought that it was about something in the past. But it's still been bugging me, and I have no idea if that dream was prophetic, if it was just symbolic, because I'm still very closely in tune with everything that's going on. I'm just trying to deal with it in a different way. And this strange synchronicity with the episodes that I put on this week, and the dream and the real life experience with Lolo getting lost and going into this panic where she just can't find her center, can't find home. I understand. I do understand that many people who have generally loved this channel are struggling for survival. I understand that. And I can't help you with Snap. But I am here. I'm here, if not every day, then almost every day. And I am here as a reliable, safe, steady place. It's the biggest gift that I can give you. And that is the truth. That's my biggest gift that I can share with you. This is the truth, and I'm going to tell it to you right now. The truth is that the world is engineered to keep us in a static loop of responses. That's the truth. And choosing silence is, and in particular choosing silence of the mind, it's the greatest form of rebellion that you have. It's the biggest weapon that you have to counter that static loop. It puts us in control. And it takes control away from those who are engineering our society to make it the way that it is. The quiet choice is the rebellious one. Welcome to the new world. This is Ellie Dreams Down Under. I love knowing you're here. I do. And I'll see you in my dreams.